My mother once again asked me to get ready today. Just from her tone and the way she spoke, I could tell that another family was coming to see me for marriage. And this whole drama had been going on for the last 3 years. It wasn't that I lacked anything. I was beautiful, well educated, skilled in all household tasks, and excellent at sewing and embroidery. In fact, if you looked at the qualities people seek in a daughter in law these days, I had them all. And yet, despite all that, I still wasn't married. In fact, forget marriage, but I hadn't even been able to secure a proper engagement. My father had passed away years ago. It was just my mother and me. I was her only daughter. She worked as a teacher at a government school, and I had a job too. Financially, we were stable, and there was no issue with dowry or wedding expenses. To be honest, 95% of the families who came with proposals liked me. In fact, things were finalized with at least 10 of them, and many others were still in discussion. But what always happened was this. The family would show strong interest, they would say yes, and then a few days later, they would suddenly back out without a proper reason. There were even 4 engagements that were celebrated with great joy, rings exchanged, sweets distributed. And yet, within days, the engagement would be broken. They would return the gifts and the ring, saying they were calling it off. But not once did anyone offer a clear explanation. My mother and I were deeply troubled by all this. In our society, a girl whose engagements keep breaking is viewed with suspicion. People start questioning her character, her worth. But I never understood what would suddenly change the minds of those families. They had already asked around, done their background checks. So why come forward with a proposal only to reject it days later? And now today, another family was coming to see me. I was so exhausted with this never-ending cycle. I told my mother, I don't want to get married anymore. But she was a mother. She wanted to see her daughter settled, to fulfill her duty before it was too late. So I got dressed half-heartedly and sat quietly. The guests arrived, and I greeted them in the traditional way. The boy came with his mother and sister. The moment I saw him, I could tell he liked me. His mother seemed to have noticed it too, because she instantly proposed to my mother right there. My mother was overjoyed, but she chose to hide the truth about all my previous broken engagements. I wanted to tell the boy myself, to come clean and spare myself from going through yet another heartbreak. But my mother refused. She insisted we say nothing. Within days, they finalized a date for the engagement. My heart was filled with fear, a familiar dread that this too would collapse just like the others. It all felt like another performance I was being forced into, and sure enough, just 1 week after the engagement, they sent back all the gifts and returned the ring. Along with a polite apology, they called it off. Just as I feared, my intuition was right again. This time, I had had enough. I told my mother firmly, no more proposals, I don't want to get married anymore. She said nothing, just remained silent. Life slowly returned to normal. We both resumed our routines. Leaving for work in the morning, returning together in the evening. As for me, I had stopped hoping. I had accepted that perhaps engagement or marriage simply wasn't written in my fate. But my mother's hopes hadn't faded. She still believed that one day I would get married. One Sunday morning, she told me we had to go somewhere for some work and asked me to get ready. I got dressed and left with her. I kept asking where we were going, but she didn't answer. When the car finally stopped, I realized we were standing in front of a dargah, a shrine. I never believed in shrines or spiritual healers. Most of them, I thought, were fake. True saints don't advertise themselves. But my mother explained that one of her friends had recommended this particular healer, said he was a very spiritual man and had solutions for every problem. I knew you wouldn't agree, that's why I didn't tell you earlier, she said. But now that we're here, you have to come in with me. I didn't argue. We had come this far, and I didn't want to upset her. I thought he might give us some amulet or something symbolic. But when we entered, there were many women already sitting there. When our turn came, my mother explained everything. The man listened and then said, "Someone has put a spiritual blockage on your daughter's marriage prospects. It's been done through her hair." He claimed the only way to break the spell was to cut a small lock of my hair and give it to him, which he would use in a spiritual ritual to remove the curse. I didn't believe any of this, but because my mother insisted, I cut a lock of my hair and handed it to him. My mother also gave him some money and we returned home. To me, it all seemed pointless. I finished my usual chores and went to bed. But when I opened my eyes, my entire world collapsed. I was no longer in my bedroom. I was at the very shrine we had visited that morning. My head was spinning violently. I tried to sit up, dazed, and then felt the presence of someone next to me. When I turned my head, my heart sank. There was a boy lying beside me. I had no idea who he was. In complete shock, I jumped up and stumbled outside. The hall where the women had been sitting yesterday was now empty. The healer was nowhere to be seen. In fact, the entire place was abandoned. Panicked, I ran outside, hailed a rickshaw, and rushed home. As I stepped inside, I saw my mother, her eyes swollen from crying. I ran to hug her, but she pushed me away. Her eyes were filled with disgust. "Why did you come back?" she asked coldly. "You should have stayed wherever you spent the night. You've already blackened your face. What's the point of returning now?" I was stunned. I didn't even know what had happened to me. And my mother was already judging me. I cried. I begged her to believe me. I swore that I had no idea what had happened. I had fallen asleep in my own bed. But nothing I said reached her heart. She believed I had left the house willingly. She didn't throw me out, but she stopped talking to me altogether. Now we lived under the same roof like strangers, and I could never convince her that I had nothing to do with what happened that night. Even I never fully understood what had happened. Who was that healer? Who was the boy beside me? Why was I at the shrine instead of home? I wanted to tell my mother everything, but she wouldn't listen. She wouldn't even hear my voice. I kept going mad silently, turning over the same questions in my mind. The only thing that brought me any comfort was the knowledge that despite everything, despite spending a night away from home, I was still untouched, still pure. But when your own mother doesn't believe that, who else ever will? Perhaps my mother, in order to protect her own dignity, never told anyone what had happened, that I had spent an entire night outside the house. No one knew the truth. Life was already unbearably difficult for me. After so many broken engagements, people had begun to talk. Every visitor felt entitled to insult me, as if it were their moral duty. My mother used to defend me. She was my only support. But now, even that support had turned against me. People had lost all fear or respect. The neighborhood women began to say cruel things openly, warning their daughters to stay away from me, as if I were cursed, as if my misfortune might spread to them too. In truth, I had been left utterly alone in the world. I had no father, no brother, only my mother. And now, even she wasn't speaking to me. All of this began driving me toward madness. I started believing I didn't even deserve to live anymore, that perhaps death was the only escape left. And this thought had rooted itself so deeply in my mind, I might have acted on it, had something not happened. One day, I wasn't feeling well and left the office early. As I was riding home in a rickshaw, we stopped at a traffic light. That's when I saw him, the same boy who had been beside me that night at the shrine. Suddenly, the thought of ending my life faded, because it reminded me that I wasn't guilty. I hadn't done anything wrong. Instead, I thought, those responsible for ruining my life must be held accountable. I gave the rickshaw driver the address of the shrine. He was an older man. "Daughter," he said gently, "I know it's not my place, but you're like my own child. Please don't go to that man. He's not a real healer. He's a fraud." "I know, Baba," I replied. "I'm not going there for help. I'm going there to get answers." He sighed. "And what answers will you get going alone to face someone like him?" "I have to," I said firmly. "After what he's done to my life, he owes me the truth." And so I returned to the very place where everything had begun to fall apart. I covered my face with a scarf so he wouldn't recognize me. He looked up as I entered. "What's your problem?" he asked casually. "I'm having trouble getting married," I said, wanting to see if he would ask again for a lock of hair, just like before. I needed to prove to my mother that none of this had been my fault, but instead, he handed me some amulets. "Dissolve these in water and sprinkle them around your house," he instructed. "And drink some yourself. The spiritual blockage will be removed." I quietly accepted the amulets and sat to the side, watching. I noticed he was giving everyone the exact same instructions. Some were told to wear the amulets, others to drink the water. I couldn't help but laugh inside. watching these poor women believe their problems would disappear just because of his worthless charms. I returned home and handed everything to my mother. Then I said something that I had been holding in for a long time. The day we first went to him, I began, he asked me for a lock of my hair. That same night, I somehow ended up at his shrine. And when I woke up, there was a boy beside me. I didn't recognize the place. I didn't know how I got there, but today I went back, covered my face, told him the same problem, and this time, he didn't even recognize me. He gave me these charms, just like he gave everyone else. I held back tears. If you still believe this is all my fault, I said to my mother, then kill me yourself, but please, please stop being angry with me. Something shifted in her eyes. She looked shaken. I'll investigate this myself, she said finally. If I find out you're lying, I will cut ties with you forever. But if you are telling the truth, then I will do everything in my power to expose and punish those responsible. I told her everything, how I had woken up with a stranger beside me, how despite that, my dignity was still intact, how I had no idea how I got there. Now, finally, my mother was by my side. And I knew. Together, we would find the truth. But I had no idea how to move forward with all this. My mother asked her friend again, "Who told you about that spiritual healer, Swas, the one you sent us to?" She replied, "A woman in our neighborhood went to him. Her problem was solved, so I thought he might help you too." There wasn't any clear evidence to suggest that the healer had orchestrated everything or manipulated us into coming to him. But something didn't sit right with me. If this really was all just coincidence and the healer had no personal motive, then why had he done what he did to me? Why was I the only one he asked for a lock of hair from? He didn't ask for hair from any of the other women. Only me. Was that the reason all of this happened to me? Only he had the answers, and confronting him wouldn't be easy. It was risky, but necessary. So my mother called my maternal uncle and told him everything. At first, he was furious. "You're an educated woman," he scolded her. "How could you believe in such superstitions?" But the next day, he still came with us to confront the healer. When we arrived at the shrine and questioned him, he panicked and outright denied knowing us. My uncle tried to push harder to get the truth out of him, but he kept repeating the same thing. "I don't know you people. You've never been here. I have never taken anyone's hair." He was so firm in his denial that we couldn't do much in that moment. And since it was his private shrine, we couldn't force anything. So we left quietly, but not defeated. We had already decided that we would take the matter to the police. My uncle didn't want my name to come up in the complaint, so he made an anonymous phone call explaining the entire situation. Apparently, the police already had some complaints against the same man, so they responded quickly. But by the time they reached the shrine, he had already fled. Still, the fact that he had prior complaints against him made the case stronger. The police began searching for him, and thankfully, within a week, they arrested him in another city and brought him in for questioning. By that time, my uncle had returned to his hometown. So I took my mother and went to the police station myself. I couldn't rest until I had the answers. There, I revealed the truth. The girl you received an anonymous complaint about, that was me. I was nervous. What if the police dragged me into the case as a suspect? But I was lucky. The investigating officer was kind and cooperative. He listened carefully and then took me with him to confront the healer directly. Standing in front of that man again, I asked him, "Do you recognize me now? Tell me. Why did you do this to me? Why me? And how did it all happen?" The healer sighed and finally confessed. "I don't know much," he said casually. "A boy came to me one day. He gave me 20,000 rupees and 2 photographs, one of you and one of your mother. He said, 'These 2 women will come to you soon. When they do, tell the girl that she has a spiritual blockage in her marriage and ask her for a lock of her hair. Take the hair, say you'll perform a ritual on it, and then give it to me.' That's all," he shrugged. 20,000 rupees for something that small? Not a bad deal." "I'm not even a real spiritual healer," he added, laughing bitterly. "I just set up a little business." So I agreed, and when you both came, I cut your hair, called the boy, and handed it over to him. What he did with it afterward, I don't know. But the next morning, some locals told me they saw a boy and a girl leaving the shrine very early. After that, no one saw them again. So I just kept quiet. Truth is, I don't live at that shrine. It's not even my home. I only go there during certain hours, hand out amulets to desperate women, and leave. At night, the place is completely empty. That was the end of his statement. But it still didn't answer the most important question: who was that boy and why had he done this to me? What did he want? And most of all, what was his goal in all this? Sometimes I felt maybe it was a former fiancé who wanted revenge on me. But then I thought, why would anyone want revenge? I had never broken off any engagement myself. None of this made any sense. The police told us that if we filed a formal FIR against the healer, they could legally begin tracking down the boy involved, but we were decent private people. My mother and I lived alone, and the idea of frequent police visits to our home was terrifying. Not because we were guilty of anything, but because in our society, people talk. And for two women living alone, reputation is everything. When my mother explained all this to the officer, he promised to help us discreetly. He said he would never come to our house in uniform and, in fact, would not come at all. Instead, he would meet us outside and keep us updated privately. That was more than we had hoped for. We agreed immediately. He had a sketch artist create a likeness of the boy based on the healer's description. When he showed me the sketch, I immediately recognized the face. It was him. That was the boy from the shrine. The officer got to work tracing him, updating us regularly by phone. After about 2 weeks, he finally tracked the boy down. He called me and my mother to the station to come and confront him, but because without a formal complaint or FIR, they couldn't hold him much longer. When we arrived, the boy was already sitting in the office. I didn't waste a second. I looked him in the eye and asked, "Who are you, and why did you do all this to me?" His answer was something we never expected. He told us that he was my first cousin, my father's younger brother's son. He and I had spent time together as children, but after my father passed away, his grandmother, my grandfather's widow, threw my mother out of the house. Since then, we had had no contact with that side of the family. My mother never looked back, and they never reached out either. Years passed, but recently, after his grandmother passed away, he had started looking for us. He found our house eventually, but when he realized that my mother and I harbored deep resentment for the family that abandoned us, he kept his distance. Except, he had fallen in love with me. So instead of coming forward respectfully, he started watching us from afar. Every proposal that came to our house, every engagement, he sabotaged it. He would threaten people anonymously, scaring them enough that they'd break off all talks. He didn't want to ruin my name, so he never made it public, but he wanted to eliminate every other possibility so that I would eventually be left with only him. He had been doing this for 3 whole years. When he heard that my mother had started looking into spiritual healers, he saw it as an opportunity. Through a distant aunt, someone related to his family but close to my mother's friend, he made sure we got recommended to that specific healer. Then he paid the healer 20,000 rupees, along with our photos, and instructed him to take a lock of my hair. In our culture, there was an old custom. If a man took a girl's hair and kept it with him, he could claim her as his betrothed. No one in the family would object. He wanted that, so that no one, not even my mother, could refuse the marriage later. But that night, something unexpected happened. He saw some strangers trying to break into our house. We suspect they were thieves, or worse, they had sprayed something inside because both my mother and I were unconscious. Overcome by panic and perhaps guilt, he took me to the healer's shrine, which he knew would be empty. He didn't touch me. He just lay beside me in silence. He said he wanted to protect me. In the morning when I left, he was awake but pretended to sleep. He followed me from a distance to make sure I got home safely. After that, he thought sending a proposal would be easy, that my mother would accept it out of fear or obligation. But his own parents weren't ready either. Eventually, though, they did agree. But before he could do anything, the healer got arrested. So he stayed quiet, thinking things would calm down. He had no idea that he himself would one day get caught. Standing in the police station, he held my mother's and my feet and begged for forgiveness. He cried, admitted everything, and promised he had done it out of love. But the way he went about it was wrong. And my mother, she forgave him. Maybe because we had no choice. Maybe because it felt like the only way to finally move forward. A few days later, my uncle, Basa, my father's brother, came to our house and my marriage to my cousin was formally arranged. Now I live with him and my life is peaceful. But whenever I remember those days, that one night, or how he manipulated so many lives, I can't help but feel a quiet ache inside. Yes, he is my husband now. Yes, he loves me. But Yeetiaz, to get me, he chose a path of deception. And that truth, I may never forget.